Hi, everybody. My name is Andrea Hack, and I'm the branded content editor for the Next Web. I'll be your moderator for today's Tcube event on how we can use digital transformation to address manpower challenges. First, I want to start by telling you a little bit about Tcube. Now, Tcube is a hybrid innovation space created by Singapore Tourism Board to support tourism businesses in their digital transformation journey. They're doing this by sharing resources, content, and holding events such as this. So far, they've held 9 physical and digital events. But today we'll specifically be focusing on the issue of staff shortages and upskilling challenges, which are now being faced across Singapore's tourism sector. From restaurants and hotels to museums and attractions, tourism businesses are finally getting the chance to welcome back tourists. However, many are struggling with much smaller staff numbers. At this moment, we'd like to bring you, our audience, into the discussion with just a short poll, which you'll see popping up on your screen in just a moment. We would love to know, is your company experiencing workforce challenges like staff shortages or skill gaps? Please take a moment to submit your answers. Interesting. So it sounds like 100% of our audience right now are experiencing workforce challenges like staff shortages and skill gaps. Well, not to worry, because today we have 4 expert panelists here to talk to you about how you can use technology to close these gaps and also boost your capacity. First, I want to quickly note that if you have any questions for our speakers, you can drop them into the Q&A chat on this side, and we'll get to those at the end of the session. Next up, I would like to invite Eugene Ng to the stage. He is the co-founder and chief revenue officer at StaffAny, which also happens to be an alumni of the Singapore Tourism Board's Accelerator program. He's here to talk to you about how tech adoption can help to optimize manpower allocation and improve productivity. Please, welcome to take it over, Eugene.
Okay, hi guys, are you able to see me? See me on the screen? Hi, are you guys able to see me on the screen? Yeah, I wanted to check to make sure that everyone can see me.
Yes, we can all see you, Eugene.
Okay, awesome. So firstly, thank Ian for that sharing just now, right? When he mentioned about a lunch, right? And hopefully none of you guys are having your lunch coma now, right? So I'll try to make this as exciting as I can so that to keep you guys all ready and all awake for the upcoming, I would say, content that not only I'll be delivering, but the rest of the panelists will be sharing. Yep, so I think just now Ian shared something really interesting, right? Regards to how can you schedule better in terms of using sales and I would say labor hours data, right? That's something that we actually focus a lot in, but today I won't be covering so much of that, but covering more towards in terms of how can we manage casual labor. Yep, come on to the next slide. Yeah, so I think Andrea has introduced me already, so I can skip the introduction of myself. But I wanted to share with you guys a little bit of a story of how StaffAny actually started, right? So one of my co-founders, Jensen, he used to operate a bar himself, right? And that's very similar to the hospitality industry. And during that phase where he was managing his bar, right, it's about not only about recruitment, but it's also about allocation of manpower across outlets. And at the end of the month, right, he also need to consolidate all of the time cards or biometric, I would say time in and time out, right, and do the tallying at the end of the month. And he realized that all this manual process is very troublesome. And on top of that, the key thing for every business is to try to drive revenue, right? that's where he needs to put in more effort in terms of sales and marketing. So out of all of these, I would say workflow rise, right? He realized that, hey, actually this element of managing a labor could be done better. And that's how the idea of StaffAny sparked about. Yep, can move on to the next slide. Yeah, so initially wanted to have a quick guess of the audience, right, about what percentage of our clients were using manual ways of scheduling through Excel or maybe biometrics in the past. But understand that I can't really see you guys. So usually people will say around 70 or 80% of the audience will say that, you know, our old clients are actually using it. But the fact is, it's actually 100%, right? And that's why they are using us here. Now we move on to the next question. Wanted to understand also like how many of the audience here are actually using, I would say, manual ways of scheduling. But of course, understand that I can't really see you guys. So I'm going to assume that, you know, for those who are, for all of you guys here, you guys are still using the manual way of doing stuff, which is all right, right? So move on to the, yeah, so I think for today's, I have a two key agenda. I think the firstly is to share with you guys regarding some of the unrealized manpower deployment challenges, which I believe hopefully you guys are able to resonate with it. The second part is about one of the pilot case study that we did with Shangri-La last year when we were on the STB program. Yep, so I was going through the first point regarding the unrealized manpower deployment challenges. So not too sure if this is actually very familiar to most of you guys. So this is an example of what I would say is of a schedule when I would say hospitality or F&B businesses are doing for their planning in terms of the manpower, right? Where you have a one column only on the names and then the days, and individual rows, you write the timing. Okay. So something that we have identified, you know, during our time here, right, is this sort of scheduling, right, results in a lot of inefficiencies, right? Especially now when, you know, the countries are opening, you guys are having more and more, I would say, need to do the scheduling for your workers. It's very hard to get all of their availabilities at one shot, and all this also result to many of the human errors. Next. Yeah, next thing is wanted to share is regarding communication, right? So pretty sure you guys are also very familiar with this, right? Looking at all your WhatsApp chat, you know, trying to chase your part-timers or your employees to actually turn up for work. And what we realized that, you know, through this means, right, it might be hard to gain a visibility of what's actually happening on the ground because not everything is alive. And thirdly, which is regards to all these timesheet consolidation, right? Hopefully, like people in the HR scene here will be able to empathize with this, whereby at the end of the month, right, after collating all the time and attendance, there's a need to check back with the most updated schedule. And more often than not, the timing of the most updated time attendance do not really match up with the initial schedule, right? Because we understand that in the blue collar space, there are multi changes towards a person's schedule. And this results to a lot of, I would say, additional labor costs being spent, right? Because there is no way for us to verify whether, you know, a shift has actually started, and there's always often a time for us to do payroll projections, right? However, we have fixed this, right? And I think the next question will be how. So wanted to use this chance to go through one of the case study that we actually have done with Shangri-La on how can we help them build their casual labor workforce. So during that pilot, I think one of the goals that we are shooting out for is to really help them build their pool of casual labor that is shared internally and between their different concepts of hotels, right? And the three key challenges they were facing before they are able to achieve this is about the scheduling side of things, right? Whereby there's always constant back and forth regarding staff communication and updating it to the latest schedule. The second one is all the timesheet consolidation is very manual, whereby at the end of the month or at the end of 2 weeks, right, the schedule and the timesheets do not match. And lastly, because there's no way to, you know, using tech to optimize this, right, there's a lot of unplanned labor costs, whereby they need to do forward projections of payroll, right? So sometimes you might need 7 days or 6 days, but the staff might not actually turn up during the time where you have a forward projected this payroll. So how we help them is with a simple 3-step approach known as a SARS, right? This is probably very familiar to everyone in the hospitality industry, right? Whereby when SARS hit us, it really hit us really badly. But what I'm sharing with you here is not the SARS virus that we are looking at, right? We actually want to remove the manual process called SARS with these 3 key, I would say, attributes of schedule efficiency for the casual labor, accurate timesheets, and with these 2, we are able to reduce costs. So this is how we help to improve the schedule efficiency. So what we have here is that we have a tool that outlines a templated schedule for your various departments. And what we could do here is that we can remove the back and forth of a communication. As you can see on the screen here, there's this thing known as a part-time availability, right? So what we empower Shangri-La, right, is to maintain their own, I would say, a casual labor pool. And once they have crafted their shift, with one click, we actually notify all their staff about, hey, Eugene, when are you free for work? And the staff will able to let, I would say, the planner know when are they available. Move to the next slide. Yeah, so this is how it looks like after a staff has indicated that he or she is available for a shift. So you can see on the bottom red box, you can see that the color is the timing color is highlighted. Yeah, this indicates that the staff is actually available. So this makes it visually easy for the planner to just click and assign them to the shift. Next up, what we have here is I would say it's a bit more complex. But what we have here is if you're finding ways to automate, right, or more efficient way to get shifts, we actually have a first come, first serve kind of setting, right, whereby with one click of a button, we actually send these, I would say, shift requests to your part-timers or to your casual labor. And upon accepting that shift, we automatically put them in on a first come, first serve basis. So this speeds up the entire casual labor, I would say, planning side of things. And thirdly, what we help with is also cross deployment of staff between various departments. I understand that, in terms of the hospitality industry, you guys might be sharing stuff between front of house, the F&B, the receptionist, right? So with this, right, we actually allow you to visualize which staff is being scheduled for which department or which outlet. And lastly, in terms of communication, what we did for them is also a way for them to notify all of their staff at a particular department or the entire company of a certain new news, right? And we have also improved this together with them in terms of making all of these announcements compulsory. So upon checking in, right, they will need to acknowledge all of these, I would say, announcement first before they can check into their shift. So in a way, we help you do that checking mechanism to ensure that information is being disseminated. The second thing that we help is really regarding coming up with accurate timesheets and to reduce payroll operations. So what we have here is a view whereby we consolidate the key hours for you to know about how much to pay a certain staff. So we break down between the fixed, overtime, and any other additional classification of hours that you guys have, right? So with this, right, and with the most updated schedule that the managers can edit on the go, and the most updated time attendance, we can reduce the need for, I would say, a timesheet consolidation and reduce the need for payroll projection. And this is where all the unplanned labor costs are at. Because usually when we do payroll projections, right, it's a lot of assumptions that a particular staff will turn up, but they might not turn up, right? And these are all huge headache for the HR department. And the next thing that we help in terms of reducing labor costs is really about rules, I would say time rules, right? Whereby we're able to reduce the instances of time theft, right? Because now we have the most updated schedule and the most updated time attendance, we are able to do the rounding based on your own rules and configuration. So for example, if a shift is from 9 to 5, if a staff is not supposed to work at 8:30 and he comes in at 8:30, we will only start counting the hours at 9, because that is the official start shift that this person is supposed to work at. Yep, so by solving these 3 elements of a more efficient way of scheduling, and a more accurate. We can go to the next slide. Yeah, because these are the initial challenges. So by solving the schedule efficiency side of things, providing a more accurate way to do the time attendance, and also empowering them to be able to control their labor cost better. That is how we are able to help the hospitality industry manage their pool of labor in terms of the casual labor side of things. Of course, on our end, we also do serve other kind of, I would say, companies. Yeah, these are some of the case studies ranging from Phoon Huat all the way to Forward Coffee and T3 Cafe, right? All this can be viewed on our website. But today's session is a bit cozier and a bit shorter, so I will not be covering them. So the key thing I wanted to share is that's what we have been doing so far. So for those who wants to eradicate or remove the SARS in your current processes, right? Feel free to reach out to me after this session, and hope to take this. Hopefully, we are able to solve it for you guys. Yeah, so that's all I have for today. Yeah, thanks so much. Yeah, feel free to contact me. Yes.
Thank you so much, Eugene. And as Eugene mentioned, feel free to contact him here through these details. And if you have any questions for him, please do drop them into the Q&A tab below. Now I would like to welcome Eunice Chua to the stage. She is the Client Success Manager at Gnowbe, and she will be talking to you about how tech adoption can help support staff training for cross-resource utilization. Welcome.
Thank you, Andrea. Good afternoon, everyone. So as Andrea has introduced, my name is Eunice and I'm the Client Success Manager of Gnowbe. So before I share my case study with you today, let me just briefly introduce what Gnowbe is all about. So Gnowbe is a mobile-first digital transformation tool that is designed for business impact through application-based transformation learning. So what we do is we move learning from just knowing to learn by doing and learn by teaching, which is the ultimate in learning design. Gnowbe engages and connects everyone, no matter where you are, and empowers people to learn on their own terms, anytime and anywhere. So in short, Gnowbe is your digital trainer in your pocket. So for today's sharing on the case study, I will be featuring Hotel Gen by Shangri-La on how digital transformation helped to upskill staff amidst COVID-19. So in the wake of COVID-19, organizations that have adapted to the new norm have one thing in common. They never stop training their workforces. In fact, they double down on it and they actually seek ways to do it more effectively and efficiently during the lull period. It was very clear that the traditional way of staff training in hotels is no longer feasible when there are manpower challenges such as having staff dispersed and remote, as well as manpower shortages. So to address this issue, organizations have to adopt a modern learning approach. Upon learning that Gnowbe offers micro-learning courses online, or what we call MLCs, the Cluster Director of Human Resources for both Hotel Gen Tanglin and Orchard Gateway was keen to sign up for the MLCs powered by Gnowbe to upskill his colleagues. He saw it as a perfect avenue to continue training the staff as they work remotely and safely from their own homes. So for all of you here today, you guys are in the hotel industry, and more specifically, if you are a trainer or department manager, I'm sure you can relate to the challenges that Hotel Gen faced when it comes to sending staff for upskill training, such as scheduling and sending colleagues who are in the operations team, sending colleagues who are more senior or have language barriers, or even those who struggle with technology. So what Hotel Gen did to overcome the challenges was that they started really slowly with just 2 micro-learning courses to be completed in 2 weeks. They also had a buddy system where they pair up learners with different tech capabilities. So one team member who is tech savvy to help another team member who is not. As the learners navigate through a brand new learning platform and adapt to the new learning approach during the pandemic, Training was then scaled up in terms of the number of courses that was introduced to them. Okay, so you may then ask, Eunice, how did Gnowbe then help with the upskilling of Hotel Gen staff, specifically on engaging employees using digital training while driving engagement rates for staff upskill training? So first of all, content is accessible anytime and anywhere, since Gnowbe is designed to be mobile friendly and desktop optimized. The staff of Hotel Gen could actually access and complete the micro-learning courses conveniently using their phone, or utilize the dedicated desktops in their training rooms within the properties if they are more comfortable to learn using those devices. Secondly, our content delivery style is dynamic. So from graphics to audio to videos, we host multimedia content, which is engaging for the staff of Hotel Gen as they progress through their learning journey, bearing in mind that the learners vary in terms of each group. Lastly, our analytics dashboard is like a well of data that provides granular insights into metrics such as users' engagement rates, course completion rates, as well as for admins to perform their qualitative and quantitative analysis and reporting. So for Hotel Gen specifically, they actually made it a point during their engagement with us to have daily reporting of the learners' completion rates so that the respective department heads can actually follow up with those team members who need more guidance or support during this period. Finally, what is the impact? So in the span of 1 year during their engagement with us, Hotel Gen had 1,600 users enrolled in the micro-learning courses, and that is 100% of their staff. And they also managed to clock about 50 to 60 training hours per month per eligible employee. And that translates to about 7 to 8 man days of training in a month. Most importantly, they had 100% completion rates for all the micro-learning courses that their staff were enrolled in, and 100% engagement rate from users who reported high satisfaction in their learning journey. So with that, thank you for your time, and please feel free to contact us should you be keen to find out more about the case study or find out more about digital transformation. Back to you, Andrea.
Great, thank you so much, Eunice. And now I would love to invite Chih Kye to the stage. He is the Cluster Revenue Manager for Singapore Marriott Cluster. Chih Kye will be explaining a little bit more about the DASH program to us.
All right, thank you, Andrea. We can just go to the cover slide and the next one. And yeah, so thank you for the introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Chih Kye. I am part of a cluster revenue team, which covers the JW Marriott Singapore South Beach, the St. Regis Singapore, as well as the W Singapore Sentosa Cove. In our day-to-day, we run the revenue strategy using data very much on a daily basis. For today's sharing, I will just be covering a case study that we did, not separate from my day-to-day job, of course, but as part of the DASH program, which relates to just the JW Marriott South Beach. Okay, so I attended the DASH program. So Andrea and myself have used this acronym very multiple times already. It stands for the Data Analytics Shift Program. It is a partnership between Singapore Tourism Board as well as the Nanyang Technological University. And the idea is to upskill the industry in the field of data analytics. It is a 10-day in-person course, which I attended last year between March and April. And basically, it helps to equip the hotels or introduce hotels to the concept of data, as well as try and inject a bit of data viewership into the hotel's day-to-day business, build a culture of data, and through it, improve the business performance. So through this program, I was able to have access to industry experts as well, one of them being Ian, who you heard from earlier, as well as others from other third parties such as KPMG. So you will see over here the 5 main course titles as part of the DASH program. I won't necessarily go through them all, but I will give you some time to read it when you receive the deck after this. Okay. So as part of the DASH program, and when you look at data for the very first time, an important concept that was brought up was crafting the question and asking the right questions. So for us, as part of the project, we had to best understand what was our goal and overall overarching direction for this project. So we started off by understanding what data we had on hand, and that came down to guest satisfaction scores. It came down to revenue and sales data. It came down to staffing data as well. And ultimately, when we consulted different stakeholders in the hotel, we thought that improving the guest satisfaction scores was very much a priority. And in doing so, improve some of the internal processes. So taking that as our base, we did a couple of studies here. So correlation plotting and quantitative analysis brought us to focusing on certain metrics, which were the main drivers related to a good guest satisfaction score, which for us on a scale of 1 to 10 was the 9s and the 10s. We then further isolated the 7s and 8s because if you were to convert a 7 and 8, it would be a lot easier with a lot less effort versus trying to convert a guest who gave a 1 or 2 rating. So zooming into that, we found that staff service was very much a metric which consumers or guests from our hotel really cared about and made the difference between scoring us from a good, a very good to an excellent experience that they had. And then from that, we understood from the guest comments through a bit of qualitative analysis that many of the 7s and 8s rather were not 9s and 10s because they had unfulfilled or poorly executed special occasion requests, be it birthdays or anniversaries. As we dug deeper into it, we realized that it was not the fact that we were missing out on these requests. We were aware of them. However, it was the internal execution which was falling short. So as such, we crafted the question, as you can see below, reducing the number of unfulfilled special occasion requests to improve guest satisfaction scores. Okay, so understanding the problem, we identified that there were too many physical forms being circulated around. Through this circulation, there were many different approvals, which made the process very slow. For example, the person wasn't at the table, was off that day, it would easily get overlooked and the process would come to a halt very quickly. And even though the entire process was seen through, sometimes on the day of arrival, there were changes that are very common to a hotel operation. For example, the room number being changed for this particular guest, initiating a chain reaction where the amenities were set up in the wrong room and suddenly had to be moved, for example. And although that's not a very common scenario, there were other changes that were needed to be updated in the system, and the special occasion requests were definitely affected, and they were not easily changed to that point. Okay, so through the DASH program, as I mentioned, we were able to have access to some consultants, Ian in particular. So we basically looked at our current systems on property and understood that there were actually untapped functions that we could use to help this process along. So by implementing that process and understanding through the process of service blueprinting where our problems were lying in, we streamlined the process by using the system to its maximum and ensuring that every single request is put digitally into the system, no more physical forms. All the approvals and further requests are recorded in the laptop or in this case, the app, which brings about a certain element of accountability, because if the request was not fulfilled, there was an escalation clause where the next manager in line would have to see to it. Next would be a further smoothing of process that we put into place, which was a cost reconciliation for these additional amenities. We convinced the finance team to not only allow for us to reduce the frequency of this, but also consolidate as many of the requests as possible at a regular interval. And this would reduce a lot of daily tasks that whoever was requesting a special occasion request would have to do. Lastly, all of this culminates into a pool of data that we can use for further analysis. And as part of the theme of today's event, it was very important. So just a matter of results, definitely improved guest satisfaction score, a bit of an asterisk there because it is an ongoing process, and through different pools of data and through the triangulation of data, we would definitely have to see if the biggest impact came from this implementation of a new process. We had a very big percentage of positive feedback from these particular special requests. And a very nice metric is that many of these fulfilled requests were made after the guest check-in, which is something which speaks to the efficiency of the new process. As in the past with physical forms, it would take away a front office person just to circulate the physical forms in person in order to get it done while the guests were still in-house if they were staying for one night. Okay. And as mentioned, with the larger pools of data available, we had the opportunity to triangulate this data. So if a certain front office agent was responsible for requesting many of these special requests and they were fulfilled successfully, we can ask that front office agent for best practices. How does she actually engage the guests in order to find out if it's their birthday or having a special occasion? Okay. And finally, beyond the Dash project. So apart from just this process that we were trying to improve, through the mentoring sessions, which covered a span of quite a few months, we discussed many different things that we could look into as well. So like I mentioned, linking up data from separate systems in order to find useful insights. This is very much related to the manpower issue that we're having at the moment, as we can identify best practices, as in the example previously, and also understand where necessary training is essential in order to improve certain processes in the hotel. Queue management in the lobby, for anyone who has been to the JW, the lobby is kind of narrow, so anything less manual to improve the process would be great. Loyalty program enrollment, which is I think something very relatable to any hotel group, can be done not just by the staff, but also by different touch points around the hotel by a digital means, for example, a ping point, for example, or a QR code. Call center efficiencies, and lastly, process improvements in restaurants, where it's not just about driving more sales, but perhaps more guest satisfaction by understanding how they are best positioned in the hotel, by understanding the foot patterns around the hotel from the staff as well as the guests, as a bit of an example. Okay, so that's a very short and quick sharing about my experience with the Dash program, as well as the case study done in the JW Marriott. Please feel free to ask any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chih Kye. And now we would like to move to the discussion portion of our event. So if our audience has any questions for our speakers, please feel free to drop them into the Q&A. And I'd like to invite all of our speakers to join me on the stage again. It looks like I still can't see you on the video, Chih Kye and Eugene. There you go. Great. So now I just like to have a little bit of a discussion with you, and follow up about your presentations. So first of all, Ian, you gave us a really great deep dive into how to use data to really create that data-driven culture. Now, my question for you is, you mentioned a few different tools. What are maybe sort of your favorite tools to use for this, and especially for maybe a business that's just getting started on their big data journey and maybe is not so familiar with this? What are maybe some of the most user-friendly tools and maybe the best way to onboard your staff?
Sure. Well, I mean, I think the best basic tool is one that probably everyone defaults to, which is Excel. And Excel is actually extremely powerful, but you run into limitations with it because it becomes quite manual, and you become very reliant upon whatever rocket scientist you have that's building those amazing spreadsheets, who then sadly decides they're going to get promoted or move to another organization, and you kind of start again from scratch. I would say that we're at a point where we're starting to see what I'd call next generation analytics companies. Traditionally, everyone would try and push all their data into a huge data lake and then have a bunch of people make sense of it. But I'm increasingly seeing people who are doing the computing at the edge. So there's a company that went through the tourism accelerator called Leader. They do all their computing at the edge. It comes out of US Homeland Security. And we're currently in the process of using them to extract data from literally every single system. So once you start to get it into one place, then you can take care of all of your current reporting, but also you can start to explore these other issues far more quickly and to gain the insights. And working with people in the DASH program, the thorniest issue tends to be that jump from Excel to the next phase, and how do you resource that? So I think that, you know, they would offer solutions to help do that. Now, I don't imagine that they're alone in this. So there's other players, and certainly more traditional solutions like Amazon has a dedicated group of people who are trying to focus on hospitality and restaurants. Microsoft has a dedicated group as well. But I don't know, typically they want you to all work with an outsourced provider. And I don't know that those solutions are quite as easy for hotels to embrace. So what I would say is this, though, that every industry has found that using data becomes a competitive advantage. Many businesses rename themselves from being an X business to a data business. Google went from search engine to a data company. AirAsia, an airline, now calls themselves a data company, not an airline. So as you start to unlock the power of all of the information you have in your systems, it becomes incredibly powerful. And it's a journey that's hard to catch up on. So if you don't get started, even with the most basic analysis of data and building a culture that uses that data, it's going to be very hard for you to catch up if your competitors are ahead of you. So I would encourage, if anything, to everyone, use resources like the DASH program. Just get started and start to build that culture internally.
Definitely. And I love how you said that, you know, it's difficult to catch up, because I think a lot of businesses, the problem is that they think, oh, you know, they know that they need to do this, but they know it'll take a lot of time and a lot of training. And so they keep saying next year, next year. But, you know, what would some of you, our speakers here, say to that, particularly maybe from Gnowbe or StaffAny, that you've, you know, been working with different businesses to onboard them to your tools? How long does it actually take to start the onboarding process, and how well do they see these results within, you know, the first months of using these tools?
All right, so maybe I can go ahead first. Right, so thanks for the question, and I like Ian Wilson's point of using data, right? Because it's like how we see a doctor, right? We think we are sick versus we know that we are sick. Is without data, we wouldn't know that we're actually sick. You know, it's just assumptions, right? And it's very hard for us to grow. But in terms of the onboarding side of things, right? I think it's like what we mentioned, what we understand earlier also, right? It's always an assumption that, you know, actually onboarding such tools will take up a lot of time. But actually most of our, I would say, users, right, they take about 2 hours and they should be able to use the solution inside out already. I think that the key thing here for bigger organization is not so much about knowing how to use the tool, but it's about alignment of certain policies or processes, right, that they want to do. Because a tool is pretty easy to be onboarded. Right? Most of our clients, within 2 hours, they are ready and good to go already, ready to use already.
Definitely.
Right, then maybe to add on to Ian's point also, right, regarding you know, some companies, you know, maybe at the start they might be using Excel first or something lighter. So just to share a bit also, actually on our end, there's another project that we are running to actually try to equip all these, I would say, smaller companies who are less than 1 year old with some kind of a tool. So we actually have a free tool just for these companies who are less than a year old, right? Because like what most of you guys here are trying to drive towards to, right? It's not so much about, you know, StaffAny having more users, but what is the kind of movement or change we want to bring to the industry?
Definitely. And Eunice, would you like to add on to, you know, maybe some tips you would share for some of our listeners here when they're, you know, onboarding to a new tool, or, you know, maybe getting ready for that change?
Yeah, I think I would emphasize a lot on what Eugene mentioned. So the onboarding portion actually is very simple. So for Eugene's digital solution, he mentioned about 1 to 2 hours. So for ours, it's about 1 to 2 days. And I think people who really want to see a change in their businesses should really change their mindset and not, kind of procrastinate and push all these changes to like next year or the following year, but to do it right now and then, because with all these digital transformation tools that you have on hand, it actually helps you to streamline a lot of the processes, and it actually makes your operations, for example, run even smoother in the long run. And in terms of cost savings for, big properties that we have in Singapore, or even the small properties, you would definitely see an impact that is very obvious. So I think the tip here is don't be afraid of change, because ultimately you are looking for something to make an impact on your business. So just go for it. No doubt, sometimes people will tell me, hey, but the property is big and I don't have that kind of resources in that sense to invest in changes like that. Then go ahead and start small with just a small function or just a small department. And from there, when you see the impact, the effectiveness of the digitalization tool, then you can expand and scale up for the entire property or even the entire hotel chain. Yeah.
Definitely. And Chih Kye, I'd also love to bring you into this conversation because, I was very interested to hear about this ongoing digitalization process that you're going through with the DASH program. I'm wondering, a few of you mentioned the importance of setting key metrics before going into a big transformation like this. Could you tell us a little bit about how you did that and how important it is for our audience here when they're thinking of undertaking a big project, a big digital transformation project?
Sure. I think a couple points related to this would be, I think the development of a data-driven culture, having gone through a process of implementing a process through a project. It's definitely a lot more work when people are not really aligned and don't really see the purpose behind it. So the direction definitely has to come from the top, where the understanding of why we're doing this particular project, why it is important, but also how it very much relates to everyone else's day-to-day work. If not, from experience also, it would be just a metric or just a number or just a line on a graph. So understanding what that means for the rank and file or the individual working at a hotel is very important. And I think to your question in terms of key metrics, I think we definitely have to dial down and not take on more than we can chew at the moment, because we understand that digital transformation is something that takes a while. It definitely doesn't happen overnight. And so just dialing in little wins, little key performance metrics, and improving them in a short span of time by kind of grabbing for low-hanging fruit would be the most easiest way to go, I think, when you're trying to start. And then when you get the ball rolling, it's a lot easier to continue bigger projects. And some projects that would require third-party or vendors and some financial input as well would be a little easier to sell to larger stakeholders. Yeah.
Definitely. And we have a comment from our audience here. They say, we are digitalized a lot. We've digitalized a lot of our operations already. Back office roles increased significantly, whilst we still can't hire for the front line. When I joined, we had 9 in back office. Now we have 17. Does anybody have a comment about this, about maybe the difference between hiring for the front line versus back office and digitalizing these different roles?
I mean, it's very hard to, without a context, to make a comment one way or another. I guess what I would say is, I think the power of digitalization is it helps us reduce low value work and helps people to focus on higher value tasks at the most important moments. So when we're short on staff, if we can get rid of low value work that employees are doing, whether that's through data and analytics to allow us to work smarter, whether that's through digitalization to automate certain processes to allow us to reduce low value work, what we aim for is giving our staff more time to be proactive as opposed to being in the firefighting mode. B, broaden their skill set so that they're learning, so that their jobs become richer and they become more productive. They can earn more money. And C, how do we focus on the moments of truth with the customer so that we can really heavy up on how do you make those moments more important, and how do we get rid of low value interactions for customers and really try and give them opportunities that when we interact, it's really quite a special and a magical thing. And I think that becomes a point of differentiation between businesses. So we could talk for the rest of the day about what actually is involved with it, but I think that's where the ultimate aim of digitalization is, and I think that's where the industry is going, and I think that will be the key to success as we go forward. And I actually think that will be part of what transforms hospitality and other tourism jobs from sometimes being very menial and low value tasks into much higher value tasks, and managers with much higher roles. And fast forward 20 years between robotics and these other forces, I think you might find that there's amazing jobs in our industry where people are going to have to be very bright about managing not just bright people, but a multitude of technologies. But at the core of it, it'll be making people happy. And what better job is there in the world than that? And wages should rise appropriately. So that's my goal and my vision in any case, and doing all I can to help the industry move that way.
Definitely. And, that's a great note to end our session on as well. And I'd just like to take a moment to thank all of our speakers that joined us here today. And of course, you, our audience. And I would just like to say, we really would love to get your feedback on this session so we can improve and bring more interesting content for you in the future. So you'll have seen a poll pop up in your screen. If you could please just take a moment to submit your answer there. You will also see a very short survey pop up at the end of the session once you've closed the Zoom tab. If you could also just take a moment to answer that, that would be wonderful. And on a final note, if you are a tourism business and you'd like to learn more about how Tcube can support you in your digital transformation journey, please do take a moment to scan the QR code, which you can now see on your screen. And thank you very much for your attention today. We look forward to getting your feedback and to seeing you at the next edition of Tcube's event series.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.